What is up, and welcome back to 24 Minutes of Not A24, the podcast that takes a look at movies outside of the A24 library, literally 24 minutes at a time. I'm Ethan Simi.
And I'm Ben Lawhorn. This week on the pod, we are looking out for the heat around the corner as we talk about Michael Mann's 1995 classic, Heat.
Give me all you got! Give me all you got!
Don't take my first true cinema moment already. Come on.
A group of high-end professional thieves start to feel the heat from the LAPD when they unknowingly leave a clue at their latest heist. That is a fucking sick line, by the way. Like, they start to feel the heat from the LAPD. This movie is, like, self-aware enough to, like, I guess I'll just start the conversation. Like, this is a certified 5-star movie. Like, I have a Heat tattoo. I love this movie so much. That's where we're at right now.
Yeah, no, this movie's, like, perfect. It's amazing. I mean, everyone knows that knows anything about this movie, but the fact that, like, they use, like, the high sequence to teach cops how to, like, do all this shit. It's like, it's perfection.
It's insane. I was, obviously rewatching it in preparation for this pod, and rewatched it last night. And we had joked last week on here of, like, it's just going to be 24 minutes of quotes, and it really is. It's just going to be 24 minutes of quotes, because that's all I wrote down in my notes. I didn't write down anything other than just literally, like, paragraphs of dialogue where it was just like, this is so fucking good. I just need to recite it on the show. So that's what we're getting into. We've got 3 Michael Mann episodes. We've got Heat. We're doing Collateral next week, and we are capping off the Patreon, the final episode ever, with Ferrari coming in a couple of weeks. I'm excited for all of our episodes, but obviously I'm most excited for Heat. And, you know, it just holds a special place in my heart. Do you want to kick off True Cinema? Like, do we want to stick to True Cinema, or should we just, like, trade a bunch of scenes? Like, I feel like that's kind of where we're at.
I mean, I feel like we can do True Cinema, but it's got to be more than 3. Like, we just got to keep going. You know what I mean?
Let's go.
Like,
yeah. I will give you the first, because I did get in my quote already.
Let's do it. Yeah, that one's... I mean, it's so good. It's been a while since I've seen it, so I forgot about that scene specifically.
Yeah.
And just when he starts yelling it, it's like, oh my God, I forgot how much of this we've got to look forward to for the rest of this movie. So
it's so good.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love the first heist scene. I mean, they really kick it off like super well. It's done so wonderfully, and I don't know, like it builds up from there. You know, like it starts out pretty strong with a pretty good heist, and then we just like go up from there. So I don't know. That was the first one I wanted to mention. Just like they kick it off wonderfully.
I mean, the intro heist is the perfect, like, amuse-bouche into how efficient and critically minded they are at exactly what they do. You get Pacino coming in as Vincent Hanna after all of it happens, and he is basically our conduit of being like, oh, these guys are professionals. These guys know what they are doing. Like, he points out things left and right. He's like, they knew we had a timer. They knew how to do this. They knew where to buy the stuff. They knew where to ditch the car. All of these things that you might not pick up like the first 1 or 2 or even 3 times that you see it, but really does lay that groundwork. So my first quote, my first True Cinema comes soon after this happens, and basically it's the first time we go home with Vincent Hanna, and he goes home to Justine, and he goes, I got 3 dead bodies on the sidewalk off Venice Boulevard, Justine. I'm sorry if the goddamn chicken got overcooked. And it's the way that he phrases it, and he holds the drumstick like up and around, and then he just like tosses it to the side, where it's just like, oh, this guy's like fucking fully enveloped. He does not give a shit what's going on outside of his mind.
No, not at all. And honestly, like, Pacino is so good in this movie. Like, De Niro's great. Everyone's doing a good job.
It's Pacino. Yeah.
But Pacino is just tearing up the scenery here with all of with everything, you know? He's wonderful, but I think it's also great because we get a look into his life, you know, and then like we hear about it later. Like, this is my 3rd marriage. Well, you say like we're strangers passing each other at the end of a marriage, like my 3rd one, you know, so we really get to know who he is as a character and how obsessed he is with his job. And then on the flip side, we get De Niro, who doesn't seem like he's ever been married, but he also is like, he's non-committal in the sense that, like he says, you got to walk away from it in 30 seconds or less. Like if you feel the heat around the corner kind of thing. So it's interesting to see how these 2 guys lead their lives. considering what they do. But yeah, no, I think that's awesome.
One thing I realized on this rewatch, and this is probably like 5 or 6 or 7 for me now, is the end. I'm going to tell you a very quick story because I know we're on a timer here. So I thought it was funny. Molly has seen this movie. Molly loves this movie. She, my partner, she came into the viewing last night late, basically right at the big heist scene where there's like an hour left. And she's like, oh, like, I would really like to watch it from the beginning, so I just like won't get into this. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I bad decision, but okay. What you do, you. The movie wraps up, and of course, spoilers, but like we get to the end of the movie, and it's a direct recollection of De Niro saying, I am alone, I am not lonely. And he dies in the hands of Pacino. He has to be holding his hand to know that it wasn't for naught, and that he did put up a good chess match. Like he tried his hardest, right? And they are connected. And so I kind of brought this realization up to Molly, and I was like, man, that's crazy. Like, it connects to how he feels. They're two sides of the same coin and all of these things, right? And she goes, oh man, you're such a hopeless romantic. And I was just like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? What do you mean I'm a hopeless romantic? Like, it's just the way that they are. And she's like, I know, they need each other. And I was like, wow. You're kind of right. Like, that is totally right. Like, they did need each other. And I just thought that was a really funny, weird, insightful way to look at it. I'm gonna go back to my next moment. He meets. This is when Hannah meets with Albert, I think is his name. Kind of like in the junkyard-ish like area. The guy's sitting down to eat, and this is where they make the deal to like meet at 2 a.m. so they can essentially get Slick's name, Tom Sizemore's character. And, he's leaving, and he's like out the door, and he just shouts, don't waste my motherfucking time. And it's just like, conversation's over. We did it. Like, you got what you needed. You can go at any moment. Like, why are you shouting back? And I just feel like, based on what I know, or like what's been revealed about Hannah's character, is like there was going to be a whole kind of subset of events where we realized he was like a very heavy drug user, and that he was altered and had this entire dark, deep side to him. And I think like Pacino kept that, even though that wasn't in the movie, and I respect that, and I think that was the right play.
Yeah, it definitely sets his character over the top, but it makes it so memorable. It also makes me wonder, I mean, I don't know that Michael Mann's known much for improv stuff, but some of the stuff Pacino says, I'm just like, were you supposed to like emphasize
no way
this?
It was written.
You know what I mean? Right? Yeah. Like, I feel like he's really like doing what he wants with it. My next one is, after that package drop goes wrong, and then good. We get that phone call.
Can I say real quick, in that package drop, when that goes wrong, when we when things start to blow up and we see Scheherlis, he barrel rolls out from wherever he's hiding with a fucking massive gun, and I was literally like, that was a sick barrel roll.
Yeah, and that wig stayed on. It was great. And we get him calling William Fichtner, who, speaking of good, like needing each other from Dark Knight, you get Joker and Batman. It's just like they need each other, just kind of like these guys do. We get that phone call where he's like, what am I doing? Like, I'm talking, what does he say? I'm talking to an empty telephone because there's a dead man on the other end of this line. It's like, oh man, like,
wow, what
a threat to receive. And like we see later in the movie, like he just holes up in his office. He's like, I'm not leaving. I can't leave this place because I'm going to get killed. But I love that delivery from De Niro. I think it's so well done.
Yeah, it's pretty insane when Waingro goes to see Van Zandt, and Van Zandt's like, I've been sleeping in and living in here day and night, man. And Waingro's like, he's not going to forget about you. And I was just like, oh, wow, you just came to basically like, and as Waingro says later in the movie, like, you're hanging out with you're getting a visit from the Grim Reaper, which is like an insanely unhinged sidebar, like little Waingro event that goes down there. But of course, yes, what am I doing talking to an empty telephone? Because there's a dead man on the other end of this fucking line. I don't know. Like, to me, that line is right up there with like the intro to Mission Impossible 2, where you're just like, that is the sickest, darkest, most twisted thing you can say to someone. And there's just like no there's no coming back. Like you can't.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do, right?
Yeah.
Of course, next one for me. They realize that they're being tailed, and the bank is worth the risk. I need it, brother. Well, for me, the action is the juice. I'm in. I have a tattoo that's a juice box that is labeled action, and that's like my take on that line. But like you mentioned earlier, that Michael Mann probably not best known for his improv, but like you can tell Tom Sizemore is really figuring out how to do this like in live time, because there's no way that like it was written down like that, or no way Michael Mann was just like, you got to pause for 12 seconds before you deliver this really rather insanely cheesy line in the best way possible. And I think this moment in particular is really insightful, because like that's kind of the only time that we, outside of like the diner scenes, but they're actioning in the diner scenes, like this is where we get them chopping it up with each other and figuring out where each other are. Like, where are they in their lives? Like, like Tom Sizemore's guy is like, he's got bonds, he's got real estate, he's good, he does not need this. And like, that's our first insight into that. So that scene in particular, obviously really good.
Yeah. I mean, that stuff is so interesting. Like knowing the personal dynamics of who you're working with, like De Niro, going to Ashley Judd and say like, no, you need to stay with him. Like I need Kilmer's character, like I need him focused, like just give him one more chance. But it's all obviously like a selfish reason. It's like, I need him focused for what we're doing here. I can't have him like worried about his relationship, what's going on at home. Like I just need him to be here.
Can I say to that point, I think the dinner scene really stood out to me in this viewing in particular. Like it's fairly short, and this is where they are first being tailed, like when they come out of this dinner. And they're not even tailing like Macaulay. They are tailing Tom Sizemore's guy, Michael Cheritto.
Yeah.
Because he ends up being the guy. So this scene really stuck with me this time, because we hang on De Niro's character for a long time, and then we shift to other couples. And obviously he's thinking about Edie and the relationship he wants to have with her. But I also viewed it as like his realization of he made this family. He made these couples. Like it comes right after he goes to Shirless's wife and is like, don't fuck around, be with Chris. And like, that's what happens in the next scene. They're together and they're happy and they're doing it for their son and all these things. Like, I think it's a very full circle moment for him realizing like, this is what I've built and what I've created. And I am missing a very key component, but this feels good right in front of me.
Yeah. I think that's great. One of the scenes I really enjoyed, kind of just showing the intelligence level of De Niro's character, is when they set up kind of that fake meeting because they know they're being tailed by the cops. And then the cops go to that junkyard, that open space, and like, all right, they're looking that way, there's a refinery, and that way there's this, and then Pacino puts it together. It's like, there's nothing here. They totally, like, they made us. Like they made us now. Like, what they're looking at? They're looking at us. Like, there's nothing here. And I love that scene so much. I remember the first time I watched it, that scene really stuck with me. It's like, oh shit, like he knows he's being tailed now. Like, and like, that's so well done. I love that scene so much.
So I wrote Pacino's entire monologue for my Letterboxd review for this one, just because like I have nothing to add to my Letterboxd thoughts except quotes. And it's like my most liked Letterboxd review of all time, which is not saying a lot. But he does say, he goes, I got an idea of what they're looking at. You want to know what they were looking at? I mean, is this guy something or is he something? This crew is good. You know what they're looking at? And he just like fucking keeps going, which is part of it. And he goes, us, the LAPD, the police department.
The police.
We just got made. And he goes, yeah, okay, okay, motherfucker. And then like the scene cuts and it's like a complete disintegration of his ability to be the best. And when we pan to Macaulay taking those photos with like a telescopic lens at the top of the water tower where they just were, Macaulay like smiles and it's just like, oh, I fucking got you guys so good. And you feel so validated as the viewer and you're like, Neil Macaulay is the fucking best. It's incredible.
Yeah, 100%. I love it.
Yeah, it's a good one. Of course I want to bring up the what, you never wanted a regular type life. What the fuck is that? Barbecues and ball games. That's the big meeting of the powerhouses. This is the real, I feel like, crucial crux of like their understanding and their relationship to each other, basically laying it out and saying like, I don't care. Like you're in my way, you will go down. And you know, vice versa. And it does kind of act as like a real meaningful moment, but it also acts as like a massive dick measuring contest of like who's gonna puss out first, like who will not kill the other guy, right? And I wrote down one more thing from this scene. Neil mentions his dream and how he has this nightmare where he has to wake up and start breathing again so he doesn't die. And he mentions that it's about having enough time to do what he wants to do. And I just thought that was really interesting in the context of this year, like 2023, and like the movies that are being made. Michael Mann coming out with a new movie. Of course, we've got Scorsese literally doing that, Wes Anderson doing that, Hayao Miyazaki doing that, like all of these great directors, stalwart artwork people that are like, I don't have very much time. Like, I don't know how I'm going to continue to tell my story. Yeah. So I just thought that was a really interesting call out of like, Michael Mann's been on this for 30 years of like, you never have enough time to do what you want to do. And I thought that was really, really poignant.
It's an amazing scene. I mean, that all takes place at the diner, right? Like that's where everything is happening here. And that scene itself is just, it was so huge just in cinema. It's the first time Pacino and De Niro shared the screen together. You know, like that was such a huge part of this movie. Obviously they were both in Godfather 2, but not sharing any scenes. So, and I always think it's so interesting that we never really get like a 2-shot of them. Like it's a lot of over the shoulder stuff. But yeah, the diner scene's classic. It's so good. My favorite line of the whole movie, and I did it last week when we were talking about it, but it's when they're like interrogating Hank Azaria's character and he's wondering why he got with Ashley Judd. And, you know, Azaria's like, why didn't you get mixed up with that bitch? And then Pacino comes in full force, like, because she's got a great ass and your head's all the way up it.
You know, like, and he's like, something happens to me when I think of a woman's ass.
Yeah, it's like, it's so good. But that is the line I think of when I think about this movie. She's got a great ass. And he's just like so over the top. Like there's no way the script said to emphasize great ass like that. But what you chose to do with it was perfect. Again, like Hank Azaria, like this movie is just full of like, oh, I know that person, you know, like it's great outside of our main cast here. So he's awesome in it. And that's like my favorite line reading of this whole movie.
Yeah, huge that, guys. Obviously, we have a very young Natalie Portman here. We've got Hank Azaria. Danny Trejo in this movie, just like literally being Danny Trejo, which I think is incredible.
Yeah, because they call him Trejo, right?
They call him Trejo. Yeah. And when I was watching it last night, I was like, huh, they do just call him Trejo. Like, I wonder if they were just like, yeah, no, that's good. Like, we'll just call it.
Doesn't matter.
Two more things. I wanted to bring up one more quote and one more line very quickly. So one quote, and this is towards the very end when Macaulay goes back. He has it. He's got plenty of time. He's got it made. He's with Edie. Everything's great. And this is what makes the movie so good is that it is the action is the juice. It is irresistible. He cannot accept the fate of that he's bestowed upon Waingro, essentially. Fucking just incredible execution, by the way. Just like, look at me, and he just caps him. But the way he gets up there is incredible. He goes to the back rooms and he picks up the phone for the front desk and he goes, "This is room service. A Jameson ordered a BLT and they screwed up his room number." And the person on the other end of the line is like, "Man, they're always doing that." And De Niro responds, he goes, "Yeah, I know." And I was just like, that's so good. Like, he's just one of the guys. He's just a room service guy, just doing his thing. And then the one other thing I have to mention that for me is the most emotional moment, and I think is probably the most heartbreaking, is when Shiherlis goes back by his house.
Yep. And that was my next one. Yeah.
Yeah. And we see he's got the cut, he's got the dyed hair. He sees his wife, and she just gives him essentially the no-go slice, and that's it. And I mean, Val Kilmer plays that exceptionally on his face, where that crushes him, and he knows that it's over, like he will never do it, and he gets by the next checkpoint, and she has to listen to it happen on the radio. That entire sequence, devastating.
Yeah, I mean, her performance, Ashley Judd, sitting on that couch, just like listening to it, having to like be restrained in her reaction, but obviously having such a strong reaction to what's going on there. It's a beautiful performance. Yeah, that was my next one. I think the only thing like we haven't really talked about other than just like quickly is that shootout. Like the shootout's insane. It's got to be one of the best in all of cinema. Like it's so well done. You think they're just about to get away with it. You know, they got the
God, they're this close, dude.
So close.
They're all smiling at each other, and they're like, "We did it, huh? We did it. That's crazy." And then Shirless spots somebody and just guns it, which is a really interesting kind of like juxtaposition to the first job when Waingro is in it, and he is not under pressure at all to fire, yet he does. And this is where Shirless has to act, and it's really this interesting like flip side of what warrants a shootout like this, right? And like Tom Sizemore's character picking up a kid as a human fucking shield, dude.
That's an intense move. That is such an intense move. But it's almost more intense that Pacino took that shot.
Like, oh my God.
That's crazy. I don't care how good you are. Like, no one's going to tell you to take that shot.
It gives you so much insight into Hannah's mind of like, these fucking guys. Like, I will not be beat. Even if there's a child near my crosshairs, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you real quick before our timer runs out, who would you be in the crew? Or who would you be in the movie? I'll let you be anybody in the movie. Whoever you want to be.
I just want to be Shirless. I love Kilmer. He's got his little ponytail rocking out. Like
But you're good. It. You're good with like a gambling addiction.
If I could be Val Kilmer, sure. Hell yeah. Why not? Yeah, I'm on board.
That's fair. That's fair. Hey, at least you're sleeping on the ground in De Niro's apartment. Like that. Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's a big win. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I would have said the same thing, but I will, for the sake of conversation, I'm going to go with Tom Sizemore. I'm going to go with Michael Chirito because this guy's got it made in the shade. He's got a great wife. He's got great kids, as far as we're aware. Like, he just a nice family man that's just, catching some action on the side. And he's just hanging out with his pals, doing shootouts for fun. He takes a hit to the dome, and he goes down in a bad way, but pretty good life up until then.
You know who really gets away scot-free here is, like, Jon Voight. Nate.
I was like, literally just going to say this guy's off the hook.
Chill. Like, he's like, hey, here's a lead. I get 10% of it. Here you go. And then he's just like, that's it. Like, man, what a life.
He's got it made in the shade. Would Heat fit into the A24 catalog?
I don't think it could, but I mean, I would love for it just so we could talk about it for an hour.
Here's the thing. I think Heat now, and this is weird to say, like coming off of the year that Everything Everywhere had, but like, I think the Heat is so powerful in like the pantheon of cinema, of like movie talk and movie conversations. Like, we're probably the 1,000th people to have a 1,000th podcast about Heat.
Yeah.
I don't think you're getting the same thing out of A24 stuff. So I just think it's too big, like in scope. I think it just is too much. And of course, like Michael Mann, like we fly over LA with Vincent Hanna, like known for setting the scenery and letting us live in like the underworld of LA. I very quickly, like, we didn't mention the diner scene in the very beginning where Macaulay just comes in and bashes Waingro's head on the table, and somebody looks around, and then Sizemore just glares at him. And it's just like, go back to reading your fucking paper.
Seriously, yeah. Like, I wouldn't mess with those guys either. You know what got me? We're going overtime. I don't care. So the shootout, what gets me during the shootouts is how many people are just like standing up watching what's going on. It's like, get on the fucking ground, you guys. Like, what are you doing? And it's like, I got to see what's happening. What's going on here?
You wouldn't be intrigued though? There's like a huge shootout going on.
I don't know, man. That just seems like just absurd. But
since we're going over real quick, let's talk about Drucker, because this dude is just getting it handed to him at his job. His guy's taking 25% off the top. He's not getting his breaks. He's on parole, and then Macaulay comes to him. And I thought this was a really interesting. I won't go on for too long. I thought this was a very interesting juxtaposition with Macaulay and Vincent Hanna, because Macaulay says in this moment, like, right now I need a decision. Is this yes or no? Will you be my driver? At the very end, when we get Hanna on the line with his team talking to Charlene, basically saying, like, will you spot Chris? Yes or no? Like, will you do this for us? Or will you be an accessory to all of these crimes? They act in very much the same way of like very clear, concise, shortly delivered yes or no's. And again, like it's just more of that insight into like these people operate the same way. They're just on different sides of the law, and like they're just trying to do their jobs.
Yeah. I just wanted to say I think our heat is Spring Breakers. I think it's the A24 heat.
Oh,
I think that's the closest that we get to it.
I think you're right.
Which is, I mean, that'd be a fun double feature. Actually, I would be opposed to it.
Spring Breakers. That'd be kind of sick, honestly.
I'd be down with that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Next week on the Patreon, we're doing Tom Cruise, Jamie Foxx, Collateral. This is gonna be your first time watching Collateral.
It's a first watch for me. I'm excited. I'm excited.
It's gonna be good, man. We got that, and then we got Ferrari to end it off. Pick some bangers. I'm pretty excited.
I mean, to go out on top with Adam Driver, it's hard to complain about it. I'm excited. Very excited about Collateral. So join us next week. What are your thoughts on Heat? Let us know that. We are on Twitter and Instagram at 24 minutes of A24. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can see, all the A24 stuff that we talk about there. We have some collaborative drafts that are up as well. And don't forget about the new pod we got coming, the Movie Draft Podcast. That's going to be awesome. So go follow us there. Thanks so much for your support. We really appreciate it. I'm Ben Lawhorn.
And I am Ethan Simi. She's got a great ass.